Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to distill Alexander Wendt's incredibly complex but fascinating theory on how international relations is fundamentally structured by ideas, not just material things. We so often think of global politics as this giant, rigid chessboard made up of purely physical realities, armies, borders, and natural resources. But today, we're diving into a really groundbreaking perspective that argues the game itself is actually built out of shared knowledge.
So here's our roadmap for the discussion. First, we'll look at moving beyond just material power. Then, we'll explore micro versus macro structures. Third, we'll break down causal and constitutive effects. Fourth, we'll get into common and collective knowledge. And finally, we'll wrap up with the concept of the self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's tackle this fundamental question right out of the gate. What actually drives world politics? As we know, traditional neo-realism essentially argues that material forces are the ultimate deciding factor in how states behave. It paints a picture of a world where survival of the fittest dictates absolutely everything, and ideas, well, they're just an afterthought. But what if the very way we think about those weapons is actually what gives them their power in the first place?
Now, the absolutely crucial point here is that while materialists focus almost exclusively on tanks and geography, Wendt argues we have to look at shared ideas and culture to actually understand state interests. Just think about it for a second. 50 nuclear weapons held by a close ally feels completely different to us than just 5 nuclear weapons held by an active adversary. The physical, material reality of the plutonium is identical. The difference is the shared culture, the historical narrative, and the ideas that construct that relationship. Without ideas, there literally are no interests, and without interests, material conditions are pretty much meaningless.
That brings us to Section 1, Beyond Just Material Power. Let's look a bit closer at why material facts alone just don't explain everything in our international system.
Wendt gives us this really brilliant matrix to break down structure into its distinct phases. He suggests we need to analyze international politics through 2 distinct levels, micro and macro, and 2 types of effects, causal and constitutive. So, let's unpack exactly how these different phases impact state behavior and their underlying properties, like their core identities.
To really grasp when ideas actually become a structure, we have to look at a time before states had a shared culture at all. Take the Spanish meeting the Aztecs back in 1519. Their interaction was driven strictly by private beliefs. When these 2 entirely separate worlds collided, neither side had a shared understanding of what a state or what diplomacy even was. Now, their interaction was technically social because they obviously had to take each other into account, but it entirely lacked a shared culture. And because their beliefs were private and not shared, their clash generated completely unexpected outcomes for both of them. You see, culture really only exists when knowledge is actually shared.
All right, moving on to Section 2, Micro versus Macro Structures. Let's see how this builds as we zoom all the way in and then zoom all the way back out. We can look at the world from the perspective of individual interacting agents or from the standpoint of the whole system's evolutionary tendencies. Microstructure is all about how specific agents relate directly to one another. Think of a classic game theory scenario, like the prisoner's dilemma, where the outcome depends entirely on 2 actors trying to second-guess each other. But if we scale up, macrostructure looks at system-wide tendencies that operate completely regardless of individual intentions. A great example of this is the tendency of states to balance against a rising power. Even if no single state explicitly wakes up intending to create a global balance of power, the structure of the whole system tends to produce that exact result over time.
And this brings us to the conceptual glue holding these 2 levels together, supervenience. It's a big word, but the concept is fascinating. A macrostructure, like a society, absolutely depends on microstructures, the people, to exist. You obviously can't have a society without people. But you cannot fully explain this society merely by looking at the individuals. The whole has a reality that is greater than and distinct from just the sum of its parts.
Which leads us perfectly into the idea of multiple realizability. This basically means a macro state is overdetermined and can be realized by multiple different micro-level combinations. It's like a nation outliving its specific citizens. The United States as a macro structure exists today just as it did in 1950, even though the specific 330 million individuals living there have largely, changed. The macro-level reality of the country persists through time, completely outlasting any specific combination of the people who make it up.
Let's keep this momentum going into Section 3, Causal and Constitutive Effects. Let's see how this structure actually impacts the agents within it. Culture doesn't just push agents around casually, it fundamentally constitutes who they are and the very meaning of their actions. Causal effects are pretty straightforward. They're like billiard balls hitting each other.
Variable X strikes variable Y, causing Y to move or change its behavior. But constitutive effects? Those are much deeper. Variable X doesn't just bump into Y. X defines what Y actually is. For instance, the rules of chess don't cause the rook to move in straight lines. The rules actually constitute that piece of wood as a rook in the first place.
For causal effects, Wendt points to how common knowledge helps coordinate behavior, and he uses Thomas Schelling's famous hypothetical meeting in New York to illustrate this. Imagine two people have to meet in New York City on a specific day, but they're absolutely forbidden from communicating beforehand. Where and when do they go? Well, surprisingly, most people choose the information booth at Grand Central Station at exactly noon. Why? Assuming you can even find the booth in that massive crowd, it's entirely because of shared cultural expectations. Those shared ideas causally act on the individuals, allowing them to coordinate their behavior perfectly without ever saying a single word.
But when we get to constitutive effects, identical physical behavior, like, say, a U.S. military intervention in Haiti, takes on entirely different meanings depending on the shared cultural context of the states involved. Think about it. If a powerful state sends military forces into a smaller state, the physical behavior, the troops, the planes, the boots on the ground, is exactly the same. But the international community's shared cultural grid constitutes the meaning of that action. In one cultural context, it is defined as illegal interference and aggression. But in another context, where the hegemon is viewed as having legitimate authority, that exact same action is constituted as responsible assistance. So the truth of the action isn't just in the physical behavior itself, it's heavily embedded in those shared cultural rules.
This relies on the philosophical concept that meaning isn't just sitting there in your head, but is actually owned by the wider community. It's much like this famous thought experiment about a guy named Max discovering his community defines arthritis differently than he does. Max has an ache in his thigh and genuinely thinks it's arthritis. His doctor corrects him, saying, actually, arthritis only affects joints. So Max changes his belief. But imagine an alternate universe where the community uses the word arthritis to include thigh pain. In that universe, Max's original belief is suddenly true. His physical pain is identical in both scenarios, but the meaning and validity of his internal thought depend entirely on external, socially shared definitions. And Wendt argues that our identities as states work exactly the same way. Our national interests are defined by the international community's shared dictionary.
Which brings us nicely to Section 4, Common and Collective Knowledge. Let's apply these effects to the very types of knowledge that literally construct our global world.
So common knowledge coordinates action right now, in the present, but collective knowledge spans generations and supervenes on those individual beliefs. Common knowledge is essentially what you and I both know we know right this second. It's the interlocking mental models in our heads. Collective knowledge, however, lives out there in the public sphere. It's the historical memory, the deep traditions, and the powerful narratives of a group. It is so much larger than any one person's brain, and it's precisely what gives a nation its enduring continuity and identity through time.
A really powerful, real-world example of this from the text is how leaders in the Bosnian Civil War utilized long-standing collective memories of victimization to mobilize drastic, horrific action. When that conflict first began, very few individuals actually privately held the belief that their neighbors were radical fanatics out to get them. However, leaders were able to tap into a macro-level collective memory, a highly charged historical narrative of past victimization that literally dated back generations. Even if individual citizens hadn't been actively thinking about those ancient conflicts on a daily basis, that collective knowledge was resting there as a potent cognitive resource just waiting to be weaponized to dramatically alter state behavior. And finally, we arrive at Section 5, the self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's look at how all these ideas seamlessly connect to create the reality we experience every single day.
Structure is essentially an ongoing effect of process, and process is simultaneously an effect of structure. We've talked a lot so far about how structure shapes agents, but we have to remember that agents are the ones keeping the structure alive. Every single time a diplomat invokes international law, or a country staunchly defends its sovereignty, they are reaching right into the cultural toolkit. By using these tools, they don't just solve their immediate diplomatic problems, they actually reproduce the very structures they are navigating. Without actors constantly acting out the culture, the structure would simply vanish.
There is this perfect quote from sociologist Herbert Blumer that beautifully synthesizes this relationship. He says we shouldn't treat rules as these magical forces that just exist out in the ether. The rules of global politics, whether that's mutual respect for borders or a paranoid arms race mentality, are entirely upheld by the daily social process of interaction. We make the rules real by treating them as real.
And because actors base their choices on these shared cultural definitions, the international system operates as a massive, high-stakes, self-fulfilling prophecy. Think of it as a continuous, reinforcing loop. An actor figures out who they are in a given situation, they anticipate what the other side is going to do based on shared assumptions, and then they act. And because both sides are almost always reading from the exact same cultural script, their actions predictably reinforce the very assumptions they started with. If we treat the world as a hostile, zero-sum, survival-of-the-fittest arena, our actions will absolutely provoke hostile responses, thereby proving to ourselves, see, the world is indeed hostile.
So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. If we are the ones constantly upholding the rules of global politics through our shared ideas and interactions, what becomes possible if we just change the script? If anarchy is truly what states make of it, as Wendt so famously suggests, then the hostile, material-obsessed world we often see isn't some inescapable law of physics. It's a cultural choice, constantly reproduced by us. If we can understand how to shift that shared knowledge, we might just be able to construct a profoundly different reality. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.